Hi, my name is Matthew Ventures, and when it comes to the first job in the games industry, I'm a little bit of an expert. I've done a lot of internships. I'm currently on my 11th internship, and I also taught Introduction to Game Development for 2 years at Stanford. So I've definitely dealt with a lot of students who are dealing with their first time through the application process. I have gone through the intern application process hundreds of times. I've worked at these companies, and I thought it'd be useful because the number one question I get is like, what was it like to work there? Or what did you like about this place? So I'm going to make a few videos just addressing that topic exactly, starting with my most recent internship, which was at Sony Santa Monica, the team that made God of War. But before I begin, I just wanted to say that if you are interested in pursuing your first job or internship in the game development industry, then I did write a guide on that subject. It's a short book, about 50 pages in a Google Doc, and the link is into the description. So you will find it there. It's free. It's free. I am still working on it, and I do want to move it over to my website eventually, but I am liking the Google Doc format for now. And it is nice to see the other people who pop in, the anonymous pandas and stuff. But if they left a comment, that'd be lovely. But I have a lot of lurkers. Okay, cool. But let's get back to the Sony Santa Monica stuff. So I have a breakdown of how I'm going to run this. I'm going to talk about the following topics, which I will have keyed off in the description of the video, which will include time codes for the interview section, office section, people, challenges, and then the big picture. Also, huge disclaimer, I'm not going to be talking about what I worked on at all, okay? That is deeply wrapped in some NDA, non-disclosure agreement, red tape. So I cannot discuss that at all. I'll just really be focusing on my experience and the amazing people I got to interact with while I was there. Okay, wonderful. So let's start with the interview. So there's this one guy, Mark, nobody really knows how to say his last name, but it's probably Bucciani. And this guy interviews like all the intern candidates. I'm pretty sure it's between him and Aaron, but I think it's all, I don't know. I spoke to Mark, and the other intern had spoken to Mark. So it does seem like everybody goes through this guy. And man, his interview is a beast. It is a tough interview. This is the hardest interview I've ever had for a game development job. I failed it completely the first time I did it. I stayed in contact with him. This is why it's so important to stay in contact and do leave on a good note. And I circled back a year later. And then a year later, I said, hey, I'm still really excited about the team. I'd love to apply again. I did, and this time I didn't make it again. I was also rejected. He told me, hey, Matthew, you did a great job, but it turns out it just wasn't good enough. You are the second candidate, and we're going to have to go with the other guy because we've only got a spot for one person. So that was definitely a double bummer. But I said to him, Mark, I really want to work at this company. What if we worked something out? What if I could do a contract that wasn't the typical summer internship? What if instead I came in the spring? And he said, let me talk to the team. We might be able to work that out. And that is effectively what happened. So that does go to show you that sometimes there is some finagling. There's a little bit of wiggle room. And even though I wasn't the number one candidate, I was able to get the job. And I think I showed them that I could do a really good job while I was there. So that is what the interview process was like. But it did mean I wasn't officially an intern. I was a contractor. I guess a junior contractor. And so that meant that I didn't get like the cool perks, like getting to go to the movie theater or whatever the interns get to do. It's certainly nothing like Facebook where they have the giant ass carnival that they throw. But I couldn't do the, they have this thing where you could buy any game for like $10 online. So I didn't have that either. Bummer. But just to work there was, a fortune in itself. So the financial negotiations went like this. They offered me a $30.25 per hour salary with no overtime, though I think if I did clock overtime, it would be probably at a 1.5 rate. And then that was with a sign-on bonus of $5,500 pre-tax to cover housing and relocation. So that was definitely a lot less than I was making at Facebook, and I would have liked to see more, but it's still competitive. I did counter with requesting a pass to GDC, where I knew a lot of them would be presenting, which was denied. Mark said he looked into it. Did he? I think he did. But unfortunately, they denied that, so I just ultimately accepted the offer they provided me. And I was happy with that. Though, and I don't remember exactly what I was paying for housing. I think it was somewhere around $2,200 a month. I did an Airbnb, which is, I think around $2,000 is what I would have expected to pay per month, because I do want my own room, and I'm happy to share a kitchen because I do cook, but I don't need to have a kitchen of myself. However, and that was a lot. Right now I'm getting fucked up the ass with my rent. I'm paying $3,000 a month for this one room, so yeah, I'm really getting fucked there. But this was a good setup. I did do Airbnb this time, and my Airbnb worked out really well. The host was also my housemate, and they were very kind. But afterwards, they wrote a review that said maybe they didn't like me as much as I thought they did. So that is very California. So if you don't currently live in California, that's something to get used to. People are a little bit passive with their feedback and that's just kind of the culture. So I do wish I maybe just solicited commentary on that, because sometimes if someone is not super happy with what's going on, they don't tell you. They wait to write it in a review later, right? So maybe I should just say more like, hey, is there something you want to say? And that might help. But ultimately, it was an amazing experience, and I did like the Airbnb. Okay, cool. Let's jump into the office. So the area was lovely. It was right next to downtown LA, and I am not really a person who goes clubbing too much, but I know there was a few people who were always going to concerts, and it does seem like that is an awesome area to be, because it is, it's Los Angeles. So that was pretty awesome. There was also the Los Angeles Game Dev Meetup group. So on Facebook and meetup.com, there's a ton of meetup groups for different indie or video game developers. And I just thought that this one was really well attended. I've been to the San Francisco one once or twice, and it's just, there's just not as much people. There definitely isn't as much life as this one had. So I really did like this location. I also went to E3. So Sony paid the wage for us for one day to go to E3. And my coworker Solara was like, dude, you gotta go, man. People are gonna treat you like a celebrity. They're gonna be like, God of War, I love that game. Nobody did. Nobody gave a shit about who I was. But I just had a ton of fun seeing the games. And, something all the game developers had in common is that they really love games, right? So we were all super stoked to see, what's Kojima cooking, what is the CD Project Red, what is their thing gonna be. I was super stoked about that. So I did love E3. And a funny story was, so there's this famous programmer who's the lead at Bungie. His name is Chris Butcher. He's an engine architect there. And so basically, I've just always looked up to this guy, and I saw this person's name tag, and he looked like Chris Butcher. And I went to him, and his name wasn't Chris Butcher. He was another Chris. And it was so embarrassing, because I was like, hey, I saw your GDC talk. And he was like, dude, I never gave one. And that was pretty awkward. So, yes, read the name tag fully before you go to talk to somebody. A little embarrassing. What else about the office? So inside the office, there's basically it's 2 floors. I'll try to pull up footage if I can, but basically there's this artist section, and then there's so it's artists and engine dev on the bottom, and then the upper floor is design, gameplay engineering, and narrative. I was part of GPE, gameplay engineering, which is my passion, and I love it. And what's cool about gameplay engineering being right next to design is there's a lot of strong overlap, and those teams do talk to each other all the time. So it was super convenient to have sort of my design buddies right there. Just something weird about the office is there was a ridiculous amount of trophies just all around the office. It was almost like paperweights. There was one room right next to the audio section, because the audio guys do audio for not just our products, but everybody's games. And man, they just had a crazy amount of awards. It was wild. It's just an entire room filled with trophies. So that was just kind of crazy. But what did strike me was that this team really was not like resting on their laurels at all. So when I was there, they actually got presented with the BAFTA, the British Academy of Fine Theatre Arts, maybe technical arts, I don't know. But they did a live stream of the BAFTA. But I must have been the only person, or maybe one of the only people watching the BAFTAs. Pretty much everybody was just working, you know? I remember I wasn't the only person because there was someone else who was watching the live stream on a different service, and they were like 1 or 2 seconds ahead of me. And so like I'd hear them say like, woo! And then I'd be like, oh, we're going to probably win this award. And then it would say, and the award goes to God of War. So that was kind of, it was fun, right? But what struck me weird was like, it wasn't like everybody was watching it. It was just me and like this one other person. And everybody else was like, dude, fuck it, man. We got to work on that or project or whatever it is, right? So I just think that fuck, I'm gonna have to cut that out. God damn it. Okay, this video is gonna take a lot of editing. Oh man. Okay, well. Okay, so yes, it was cool to watch that, and the team was just super motivated to work on what they were working on, whatever that might be. What's next? So yeah, so there wasn't a lot of food amenities. Definitely don't expect meals. So Zynga, Facebook, like these are companies where they're providing you with meals. Even Manticore, where I'm at now, which is a startup, is providing everybody with meals, but they do not give you meals. You have to go to the food truck, wait on a long ass line, and get your donut there. So that's just something to be aware of. And I also did bring food from home sometimes and cook it in the microwave. Yeah. So there was weekly events, which were really awesome. They just had a really good team that's like organizing that. So there was a Magic the Gathering tournament, which Sam Sternclar put on. That was a lot of fun. Then there was movie nights. There was an improv class where they had a professional improv teacher come in and like teach us some improv for a few people who wanted to sign up. There was weekly, like not weekly, maybe like bi-weekly, like Q&A. So you can Q&A as in like QA, like quality assurance. So you can go and play the latest builds and like see, what does this feel like? What are my feedbacks? So that was really fun. And then there was also a sketching class, which was kind of intimidating because all the people who like went to the sketching class are like pro artists. So they're like writing this beautiful illustration and stuff. And I'm just like, here are my stick figures. But I had a lot of fun with that nonetheless. So yeah, there was a lot of fun events like that. And the next section is people. So as I said, I worked on GPE, gameplay engineering. And and I would just say, like, before I start, these were just an amazing set of people. It really does feel like a family at Sony Santa Monica, more so than any other company I've worked at, frankly. They just have such great chemistry, and I do think, especially after this most recent game that they went through, it's just the people who wanted to stay really did, and they're all kind of on the same page, they're on the same vision, and I think that was just really, really great to see. These are people who, are going to have to go through some serious crunch together. These first-party studios like Naughty Dog and Sony Santa Monica, like these guys go through some serious crunch, and I think it's just really important to like the people who are sitting next to you. I got to do a ton of different projects. Like I said, Burke put me on so many different things, and I got to interface with dialogue, which is my passion. In the God of War game, when I got to ride on the boat and hear the boat conversations between the father and the son, those parts were definitely my favorite. So it was so cool to see like how that was architected. And it was really challenging. I have to say it was really challenging. There was always a technical hurdle or a technical challenge, just because there was so many different languages I had to interface with. A lot of people think like, oh, okay, you're just going to have one programming language to work in for the rest of your life. And I think on some teams that may be true, but the people at Sony Santa Monica are such generalists. I wrote this down. During my 3-month internship, I worked in Bash, Perl, C++, C#, Python, their custom implemented data language, and Lua. Whoa, that's like, that's six or seven different languages I had to write in, which was crazy, man. Mostly C++ and C sharp, but that was just pretty wild. Just jumping into like these new code bases on each different task was man, it was fucking exciting. I had a ton of fun, but it was sometimes a little hard to keep your head above the water with just like so much going on. And also, there was just like nothing written down. There was like not a lot of documentation with respect to the code base. So you really did have to practice the art of swimming through code, as they say, of like figuring out what things do. So that was something I definitely got a lot of practice on. And it was hard to just know the social cues of like who is responsible for which system. With nothing written down, it's hard to figure out like, oh, okay, I'm looking at this script. Who is in charge of this, and like who should I talk to about this? Sometimes that could be a little bit hard to navigate. And then I did get squeezed a little bit at the end. There was a few features I wanted to implement for this tool I made, and yeah, basically it just came down to the wire, and I knew that I had to finish it if I wanted to get these features done, and I did want to leave a really good impression, so I did put a lot of extra time in the last few days. I did crunch a little bit on the last day, which was a little bit embarrassing because I must have stayed at the studio until like 2 a.m. And then I come in the next day and I'm doing the code review with Victor, and he's looking at my code and he's like, well, let's look at the logs. And he's like, oh shit, what the heck's going on here? It looks like there was logs recording at 1 a.m. And I was like, yeah, that was me. I was here. So that was a little bit embarrassing because he did catch me on that. But it's all good. Because I got my shit done. Which I was most proud of. Okay, cool. So big picture things. So the big picture was I loved how their meetings were organized. The pressure for the meetings was not on like the participants, but the organizer. So what would happen is like they really had no meetings. At other companies I've been at, it's like I'm in a meeting every day. I have a meeting pretty much, which kind of is a pain in the ass for someone who's a little bit more focused on being growing as an independent contributor right now, and I just want to like really practice my coding skills. So they have way less meetings, and if there is going to be a meeting, you don't have to like keep thinking about it, because I know that's the biggest pain in my ass, right? It's like I get that little ding, and then it's like in 15 minutes you're gonna have a meeting, and like I'm kind of in a different headspace right now because I know like I can't go too deep because I'm gonna be in a meeting in 15 minutes. But what they do is they just kind of come around like little shepherds, and they gather the manager and the producer, and they gather all the sheep who are supposed to be part of that meeting. And they pick you up, and they throw you in the bin. So that was really nice. Like I didn't have to have my mind like on too many things at once. And also something that I think Eric situated, which was pretty smart, is they have the leads meeting, and then they have the team meetings. So basically, Eric can say like, okay, this is what I want you to tell your subordinates. And then when it comes to the gameplay engineering meeting, like I know some of those messages are just coming right from the top, and it's like, hey, Eric's hosting office hours and stuff like that, right? So I think that was a really smart way of doing it, and like a little trickle down system. And then they did have, I believe it was monthly, it might have been bi-weekly, all hands meetings just to keep everybody on page. So that was awesome. And there was also a few parties to celebrate. So there was like the 1-year anniversary for the new God of War, and I think there may have also been the 10-year anniversary for the God of War franchise. So those are both awesome things, a little bit of party to hang out and to celebrate. And, you know, there is a little bit of an imposter syndrome that sets in when the studio is winning so many awards, and it's like, dude, like, I'm just an intern. Like, I just joined here, and, like, I'm getting the applause. So I do think that was a little bit of a, you know, an infiltrator syndrome or imposter syndrome. But, yeah, I mean, but after a while, you know, you do kind of just come to appreciate like this amazing team you're a part of, even if it's only for a few months as an internship. Yeah, so they did have a recent departure, because I do think a bunch of people quit when to work at Apple. It did seem like a little bit, maybe a few heads from their engineering team they were lost to that. But despite that, like the culture felt incredibly strong. So I've worked at companies that did actually just have layoffs. So I worked at 2K in the Hangar 13 studio right after they had that big layoff after Mafia 3. And man, it was a little bit like sad. You could just like, you see the empty desks and you kind of feel it. Like you kind of feel like part of the team just got ripped out. I mean, Jesus, Zynga, it was like that hard. Like, cause you just see entire floors. It's like an empty mall, basically. It used to be a mall, right? So it's like a little haunted, empty mall in some areas, and that just like, it gets pretty fucking spooky. But I didn't feel that at all working here. Like, it definitely felt like this is just, if anything, it felt like there were people who like weren't 100% in on the vision, and they left, and the result wasn't lesser. It was like, okay, now we have maybe less people, but now they're all 100% in on the vision. And it just seemed like this team 100% like knew who they were, knew what they wanted to do. And yeah, it was a very cohesive team, I'd say. And they were super passionate about the fans, which I think was super cool. So they put out a number of YouTube videos, and like they just get so many applause from the fans. And they also invited like the Maven. I just did a video about Mavens. You should check it out. But they invited like the guy who was like the biggest God of War fan to come, and they invited someone who did this cool Lego thing. So I just think like their community engagement was like so awesome. Just great to see how well they're, I guess, responding to people who are passionate about their product. And yeah, and it was just awesome to work on a team that people had heard of, right? So my indie game has over 1 million downloads. But guess what? And it's won awards. It won the Google Play Design Award. But guess what? Nobody's ever heard of it. I mean, besides the fans of No Stranger, those million people, like when I go to a gaming meetup or whatever, and I'm like, oh yeah, I built No Stranger, like nobody fucking knows what that is. And it's kind of, and I am someone who is motivated by that sort of like recognition and the awards and the accolades, like that does matter to me. So the fact that I was at the airport and I was talking to someone and I was like, oh, do you play any games? And she was like, oh no, but my husband does. And I was like, oh, what kind of games does he play? And she's like, oh, he's obsessed with this one called God of War. I was like, oh shit, dude, I worked on that team. So that was pretty cool. Just to be able to say that, like, I do have a tremendous amount of pride. And I even got the beer stein for the God of War, right? And a whole bunch of swag. So that was pretty awesome to have. Okay, so then in closing, how did it wrap up? So I did a presentation about the features that I'd worked on. My internship was a little bit different. Usually in internship, you work on like one big project, but I had like a ton of little projects that I did, and then this one big feature at the end that I maybe crunched a little bit on. So I presented all that stuff. I showed them the new feature and how to use it, and that went really well. And then I talked to my boss, and basically I said I had to go back to school. And what they ultimately said was, they would be interested in seeing me on the team again. However, they couldn't consider giving me an offer if I couldn't accept it for a year. So I have one more year of school, and they said, to hold a slot for an entire year would be too difficult for the team because they have to ship this, fucking product. So it was a little bit of a bummer to hear that, but I'm definitely really encouraged to apply as soon as I finish school, because out of all the places I've worked, this is 100% the best experience I've ever had in the games industry. And yeah, I'm just kind of in love with the team. I'd love to be back there. So it was an incredible experience. That's just my take, though. As I said, some people totally dipped, right? So I think everybody does take a different perspective from it, and it's different. What team are you working on? What stage in your career are you there? And yeah, basically what you want to get out of it. So ultimately, what I'm trying to say is that was just my experience. And if you're interested in applying for that company, you should totally do it. If you want to make a career in the games industry, you should 100% check out my book on the subject. It has been read by hundreds of hopeful game devs and has helped place many of my students into their first jobs, including some people who are leading the Niantic team, which is pretty crazy. I now have a few of my former students who are leading their new Harry Potter game, right? So it would work for them.
I forgot
it
to
could
say
work
like,
for
comment,
you.
subscribe.
Please check it out. I would love to hear what you think about it. And if you enjoyed this
Like,
video, let me know what you'd like to see in the next
comment,
one. I could do reviews of the other companies I worked at, talk about those experiences,
Please, it'd
or
mean the world to
more
me.
tutorial content.
Thank you.
Always
It's
happy
free.
to pump that out. So once again, thanks for watching. And yeah, I just appreciate you being here.